Today I'm feeling a little happy and very relieved after the election, the federal election that took place in 2019 yesterday. A result that I predicted but without a lot of confidence, so I'm pretty happy that I got it right, as opposed to opinion polls who basically got it very wrong. And the first opinion poll that I encountered last night was while watching the Channel 9 election coverage online. I decided to get the streaming version of it, and that seemed to work pretty well. But the first thing that actually occurred was that, apart from the usual preamble, is that there was an exit poll that they'd conducted, and they had the results of after an ad break. We didn't get the ads, luckily, so that's another great advantage of watching this coverage online. But when they came back, they did provide the details of this exit poll, and Chris Ulhmann, who is now their political reporter, who took over from Laurie Oakes, and I thought that's about time that happened too, because I think Laurie was way past it. Anyway, Chris Ulhmann gave us the results of the exit poll, and it was basically an emphatic win for Labor. And Chris decided to take this as gospel and virtually declared that Labor were the winners before one vote had been counted, which I thought was a little strange. And Chris does have an ABC background. So what I ended up doing was actually switching from the coverage on Channel 9 across to Sky, and I had the Herald Sun newspaper showing, front page showing on another screen. So I just switched between screens on the computer and just get an overview. I actually ended up liking more the Sky coverage, although technically it was a major problem with it. There was a lot of freezing that took place later, maybe because there was a lot more people watching later in the night after, say, 10 o'clock, when a lot of figures were coming in. But it really got very annoying. Luckily, because I happen to live in Cairns, we have free access to Sky News on one of the channels here. And so I was able to watch it through broadcast, and that was good. So that overcame that problem. But the Channel 9 coverage was all right. I even found Julie Bishop okay to handle. The problem with the Herald Sun coverage was it was all over the place with the count for the seats that had been won, and also the percentage of votes. It just seemed to be out of alignment with both Channel 9 and Sky, who seem to have pretty well the same data. So there was a consistency there, but the Herald Sun just seemed to be totally out of whack. So I don't know where they're getting their information from, but it just seemed to have it just off the planet. I did also check out the ABC via an online feed that was being run by an Australian YouTuber. That was a pretty ordinary coverage, because that guy seemed to be more interested in the sound of his own voice than allowing the information to come out through the actual media outlet, which he happened to put it on the ABC, and I thought he was actually more right of centre, but he went with the ABC coverage. And of course, as to be expected, the ABC coverage was understating the amount of votes going to the Liberals. So their ABC is at it again with the bias. The thing that got me with Julie Bishop, I thought her coverage was pretty good overall, as she defended the Liberal Party and told the other commentators that there's been so many pre-polls that she thought there would be quite a substantial swing to the coalition, and that seemed to be borne out as the night went on. So she was quite right there. But the other people on the panel didn't expect that the Liberals had a hope in hell of winning. So, but what did get me about Julie was she couldn't resist putting the knife into Tony Abbott on Channel 9 about how she said a younger candidate should have been pre-selected for his seat and would have had more of a chance of winning. So I thought that was pretty low, kicking a guy when he's down. I mean, come on, Julie. You can't help but use that knife set of yours. We went to Zali Steagall early in the night when she crapped on about climate change during her prolonged victory speech. The same Zaggy Stegel, who has been spotted behind the wheel of a Nissan Pathfinder T1 model, which can emit an eye-watering 234 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometre. The other information about Zari is she hasn't bothered installing any solar panels, so I don't know what great commitment she has to climate change. Not that I believe in it anyway, but if you did believe in it, you'd think you'd actually take some action, but apparently not. And a key supporter of Zali during the campaign was the well-known infamous Tim Flannery. This is the same Tim Flannery who in 2007 predicted that global warming was so baking our Earth that even the rain that falls isn't actually going to fill our dams and our river systems. Instead, dams for Brisbane, Canberra and Sydney later filled to overflowing. So well done there, Tim. Zari was also aided by an army of get-up brown shirts during doing her bidding, and there was quite a bit of an intimidation taking place apparently, so I don't know if it was a particularly clean campaign that took place in that electorate. By contrast, Abbott's concession speech was both dignified and humble. He said it was more important that the party got over the line rather than worrying about his own seat. The electoral workers that were massed there around him cheered him on enthusiastically. There was quite a lot of love in the room in spite of the fact that they must have been pretty devastated. Sick-looking Graham Richardson saw the writing on the wall later in the count. He was one of the realists, and he cited negative gearing and franking credits as two damaging policies that needed to be dumped by Labor sooner rather than later, and I would have to agree with him. He's pretty astute. He's not looking too good physically, but the mind is still ticking over with Graham. Bill Shorten surprised me actually. He did the right thing and he called Scott Morrison to concede the election. So that was pretty big of him, and I thought he might have been doing a Hillary Clinton and just going to bunker under and hope for the best, even though it looked like it was a lost cause. But no, give Bill credit where credit is due. He did do the right thing. He later fronted the party faithful, addressing the crowd as friends around a dozen times. Boy, he repeated that term so many times I couldn't believe it. He sounded like a spruiking some sort of medicine, snake oil medicine or something. But he also did another thing I commend him for. He did announce that he won't be running for party leadership. So that was also an impressive show of realism on behalf of Bill Shorten. So even though I thought he was full of it during the campaign, and I did doubt his sincerity, I thought he did handle himself very well on the election night. So hats off to you, Bill. You did the right thing there. Later, Scott Morrison was absolutely mobbed by an adoring party faithful as he tried to make his way to the podium to commence his victory speech. Yes, it was a huge crowd there. Ben Fordham from 2GB shoved a microphone in his face and spoke to him and his wife. And 2GB have been very strong supporters of the coalition, so and their biggest talk station, radio station in Sydney. So Scott Morrison and his wife were quite happy to say a couple of words to Ben before Scott worked his way to the stage, and he was actually surrounded by his wife and two young daughters, and he also actually addressed the crowd as friends in his victory speech. He thanked the successful and unsuccessful candidates, including Tony Abbott, which I thought was good. It was a good speech by Scott. Tellingly, no mention of Malcolm Turnbull. Toxic Turnbull didn't get into the mix, and he was supposedly a great friend of Scott Morrison. Maybe not so much these days. Now it seems Liberals will actually govern in their own right with better representation in the Senate. So that's the big bonus as well that no one really saw. The polls got it totally wrong, as I mentioned earlier, and a punter blew $1 million betting on Labor, although I think he might have been betting with Sportsbet, and Sportsbet foolishly decided to pay out punters who had actually picked Labor before the vote had been counted, which I find extraordinary. Now, the icing on the cake for me is that Rob Oakeshott, Julia Banks didn't come close to winning in their seats. And Rob Oakeshott was that supposed independent who was in a Conservative country seat in New South Wales and during that Rudd period, and he took forever to say who he's going to support. It took 17 minutes for him to actually say who he'd support. It was agonising, and the press weren't impressed, and I don't think anybody else was impressed, but he just loved the attention. So bad luck, Rob, you're out of the picture now. And Julie Banks was just... she's another person who I have very little time for. She was a Liberal candidate, Liberal member, I should say, and she just ratted out the Liberal Party, and on the grounds that she'd been bullied. So she found politics that hard to handle. Well, if it's so hard to handle, Julie, why did you come back and contest as an independent in the next election? Just doesn't wash, Julie, I'll tell you. I'm sorry, that just doesn't add up. I was Karen Phelps. Looks as though she may have lost her short-term seat in Wentworth, and that's another good piece of news. And also, Clive Palmer, who spent $80 million on this campaign, it doesn't even look like he's going to pick up a Senate seat in Queensland. My God, what an absolute waste of money. He did do the Liberals a fair bit of good because he was preferencing them, so that's why when the preferences are allocated, it looks like the Libs are going to do fairly well with a lot of seats. So good on him for that. His policies weren't bad. I don't rate him much as on a personal level because I think he's done some really shonky things in the past. I think a lot of Australians agree with that. But I've got to say his policies weren't bad, which is a shame. If he hadn't tarnished his own image, he might have actually done a hell of a lot better. But he spent all that money for nothing, in effect. Mind you, he slept half the time when he bothered to turn up to the Parliament last time, so I don't know if he's missing out on much at all. And I think Bill Shorten got lulled in a false sense of security because he thought he was going to have another candidate to come up against, like Malcolm Turnbull. But he's a bit like what Kerry Packer said about Alan Bond when he bought Channel 9 for such a high price from Kerry Packer years ago. He said, Alan Bond's just come along once in your lifetime. And I think for Bill Shorten, that's what Malcolm Turnbull was. He was just one of the most inept campaigners, and it made Bill look a lot better than he did. Bill's got energy, but he didn't do his homework this time, and he's been found out. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you, or entertainment, or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.